Good afternoon, Trinity, United Church of Christ, Gary. I am so excited. I am so excited to kick off another Tuesday, 12 noon Bible study for us on today. Feel free, family, to grab pen and paper as we are getting ready to have an amazing time talking about an awesome, wonderful topic. Let me say something, family. Let me say something. We have been spending some time in an amazing book. Check out this book, family. Check out this book. Let me show you this book. We have been spending an amazing time in this book entitled Homecoming. If you have not had an opportunity to grab this book, let me let you know this is something you don't want to pass by. Please grab this book, Homecoming, Overcoming Fear and Trauma to Reclaim Your Whole, Authentic Self. We've had a blast these last couple of Bible study sessions so far, as we've been spending some time talking about this book. We've gone through chapter by chapter, and we've had a blast thus far. The first two Bible study sessions we went over the introduction, chapter 1 and chapter 2. Today finds us in chapter 3. And so we're going to have an awesome time talking about chapter 3 in our book today. Let me also let you know, family, there is, if you are interested in podcasts, there is an awesome podcast that matches our Bible study series. And so we want to invite you, if you like podcasts, join our author on this podcast entitled Homecoming with Dr. Tamar Bryant. You may know her, our beautiful sister you see on the screen today. You may know her because she recently set a trend. She recently became the president of the APA. The APA stands for the American Psychological Association. And we celebrate our sister. That's right. We show her some love because as a young Black woman, it was no small feat for her to achieve this wonderful accomplishment. So we celebrate her. She's also an ordained clergy, in addition to being a clinical psychologist who is president of the APA. She's an ordained clergy in the AME faith tradition. You may know her older brother is Reverend or Pastor Jamal Bryant, and down in Atlanta, pastor of New Birth Baptist Church. Her father is the Reverend Bishop or Elder John Bryant, who is a bishop in the AME denomination. But our sister has a mission or a passion, she says, to combine religion with psychology. She believes that which impacts us psychologically leads to or impacts also our spirit and our body. And so she believes that we just can't have conversations around theology, religion, or spirit. We also have to have conversations about psychology, mental health, emotional space, and our emotional status. And so we've been having a blast because she says, hey, what you think influences how you understand God, how you understand your faith. Isn't that an impressive, amazing wisdom or insight for us? You got it, yes. So that's why we spent some time hanging out with our sister, listening to the wonderful wisdom that she offers for us. In some sense, our sister, Dr. Bryant, wants to highlight a particular dynamic. The dynamic she wants to highlight is, in some sense, it's time for us to come home to ourselves. Yeah, that's right. That's right. She says, we've spent so much time being disconnected There are particular instances that have happened to us in life that have caused us to be disconnected. And disconnected from what, you might ask? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Disconnected from ourselves. That's right. She says, in some sense, many of us have become disconnected from ourselves. What does that mean? She says in chapters 1 and 2, it is various types of traumas that we have experienced in life that have caused us to become disconnected from ourselves. And so in some sense, she says, life is all about trying to figure out, trying to discern, how do I reconnect with myself? How do I reconnect with my ways of being, my authentic, genuine identity? How do I reconnect with my authentic, genuine mission and purpose in life? And so this journey of coming home represents a psychological and emotional space of reconnecting, if you will, with the self, reconnecting with our mind, our body, and our spirit, reconnecting in such a way that gives us an opportunity to, in some sense, live our authentic, genuine life, free ourselves from traumas and wounds that seem to keep us bound, seem to keep us from accomplishing our divine call in life. And so journey with us as we desire to go back home. So our topic for today that our author wants us to reflect on is, what are external signs that show us that we are disconnected? That's right. I know. You're saying, what do you mean? What do you mean? I'm so glad you asked that question. Our author wants us to grapple with, okay, there are actions, behaviors, or external signs that show us when we are disconnected. They provide clues for us. They are like a red flag or a white flag that let us know we are disconnected. And so there are particular actions or behaviors that we can check in with ourselves around to see, are we doing those particular actions and behaviors? Are those particular actions and behaviors something that we could say, wow, I'm actually doing that. So she invites us to take personal inventory of particular behaviors so that we can ask ourselves, am I disconnected from myself? There's a particular Bible story we want to lift up in this time that I want to use as an example to help us in light of the particular themes or dynamics our sister brings out. If you have your book, join us as we engage chapter 3, External Signs of Disconnection. That's the chapter we're in on today. And the particular Bible story that we want to focus on is, turn to the Gospel of Luke. That's right, the Gospel of Luke. The particular Bible study story that we want to hang our hat on today is from the Gospel of Luke, Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. Again, that's Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. And it reads, I'm reading from the Message translation. As they continued their travel, meaning Jesus and his disciples, Jesus entered a village. And a woman by the name of Martha welcomed him and made him feel quite at home. She had a sister named Mary who sat before the master, hanging on every word he said. But Martha was pulled away by all she had to do in the kitchen. Later, she stepped in interrupting them, saying, Master Jesus, don't you care that my sister has abandoned the kitchen to me? Tell her to lend me a helping hand. The Master Jesus says, Martha, dear Martha, you're fussing far too much and getting yourself worked up over nothing. One thing only is essential, and Mary has chosen it. It's the main course and won't be taken from her. What do we say? What do we say? What do we say about this text? We want to spend some time for a moment focusing on our beloved sister, Martha. That's right. We want to spend some time focusing on the life of our beloved sister, Martha, and her particular behaviors or actions in this particular passage of scripture in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. We see Jesus finds him and his disciples as they're traveling to a particular village. They decide to take a rest, to take a load off, to go hang out in a particular home. And in this home, they find or meet two sisters, one named Mary, one named Martha. One sister in particular is sitting down at Jesus' feet, taking in every word that Jesus is highlighting, every word that Jesus is saying. That's the sister named Mary. But there's another sister who is spending time preparing the meals, prepping the home, making sure everything is in order at the house. Now, I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and I have a little sympathy for Martha. I totally understand Martha's plight, Martha's predicament. If you grew up in the South, you know firsthand there is one major belief that's always taught to us. That belief is around hospitality. You know, whenever someone visits your home, a common rule or theme that my grandmother had was that there should always be something hot on the stove for that guest. When your guests arrive, it is considered taboo if they come by and there's nothing available for them to eat. There's nothing available that you've cooked, waiting for them to seek nourishment with or on. There's got to always be a meal ready. I also grew up with this belief from the South that said your house must always be clean because you don't want anybody just coming over, popping up, and your house is a disaster, right? So there's this sense of responsibility, huge responsibility around making sure you always got something good to eat for people. And first and foremost, you always have something available for people to snack on. However, even though these are wonderful cultural wisdoms, wonderful cultural rules and traditions we've lived by in our life as people of African descent, the challenge, however, is these type of actions and behaviors have breeded some external signs of disconnection, meaning these behaviors are not healthy. These behaviors keep us disconnected from ourselves, according to Dr. Tamar Bryant. Let's get into some specifics with our sister Martha. First and foremost, according to Dr. Bryant, first and foremost, you will be disconnected from yourself because a particular behavior that shows you're disconnected from yourself is because you will always try to overfunction. Overfunction, that's the first word Dr. Bryant highlights for us today, overfunction. The question she asks us is, are you an overfunctioner? In some sense, we see this was Martha's challenge. Martha was so busy running around the house, trying to cook the meal, trying to prep the house, that she was in some sense overfunctioning. This is what overfunctioning looks like. in this biblical text. And so a reflective question that our sister, Dr. Tamar Bryant, asks us to reflect on is, are you an overfunctioner? An overfunctioner is someone who feels the need to do everything for everybody, constantly give advice, takes on all of the responsibility, always helping, always needing to be busy, hard to stay still. We carry in our bodies overfunctioning anxiety. Not only was Martha unfortunately guilty of being an overfunctioner, but I venture to say our beloved sister in Proverbs 31 was also an overfunctioner. If you read Proverbs chapter 31, verses 1 to 31, you will see these specific characteristics and behaviors in the life of our sister in Proverbs 31. So the question for us becomes, are you an overfunctioner? And if so, how can you practice saying no, not doing everything for everyone, actually saying to somebody, no? How can you resist not giving advice? How can you resist saying to yourself, I'm not going to take all the responsibility. I'm not going to always be the one to give advice. I'm not going to take on all the responsibility. I'm not going to do everything for everyone. I must learn to start saying no. There's other people who can step up and help. I'm not going to be the one to always help. How can you resist having a busy calendar? What would it be like to sit at home and rest all day? You know what gets me in trouble, beloved? You know what gets me in trouble? This device, my cell phone. This is a demonic device right here. This device gets me in trouble. So a wonderful self-care strategy technique that we utilize is say, what would it be like to sit at home, rest in bed, rest on your couch, don't do any housework, delegate responsibilities to other people, say no, don't check your emails, don't check your text messages, just sit and rest. It's so hard for us to do that. Have you ever gone 1 hour without looking at your telephone? Have you ever went 1 hour without checking your email? It's so hard, isn't it? What's worse is social media. Have you ever spent one day where you just did not log on social media for the day? Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Our sister, Dr. Tamar Bryant, highlights for us one of our goals in life that shows that we're disconnected from ourselves and they're disconnected from others is our desires to overfunction. Overfunction, overfunction, overfunction. When is the last time you rested? When is the last time you took a break? We need to stop glamorizing overworking. The absence of sleep or good diet, exercise, relaxation, and time with friends and family isn't something to be applauded. Too many people wear their burnout as a badge of honor, and it really does need to change. It really does need to change. The second tool that Dr. Bryant highlights for us to let us know when we are disconnected from ourselves is our desire to be distracted by dysfunction. Distracted by dysfunction. That's right, that's right. Do you have something in your life that's currently dysfunctional? Is there a relationship in your life that's currently dysfunctional? How do you not become distracted by dysfunction? Dysfunction shows up in all areas of our life. My household could be dysfunctional. My work could be dysfunctional. Particular relationships with certain people could be dysfunctional. In some sense, we have to push ourselves to say, am I engaging in dysfunctional behavior that's distracting me from my mission and purpose? Dysfunction is what we see our beloved sister Martha doing in this text. Dysfunction says overwork. Even though Jesus himself is in your presence, get up and do something else. Get up and just start cleaning obnoxiously. Get up and just start cooking obnoxiously. Get up and start tidying up around the house obnoxiously. When the Spirit of the Lord comes into your presence, can you sit and just be in the presence of the Lord without doing anything? Without becoming distracted by dysfunction. So the second reflective question for us today, in addition to reflecting on are you an overfunctioner, the second reflective question for us today becomes, do you get distracted by dysfunction? Even dysfunction that shows up in our work environments. Even dysfunction that shows up in our work environments. We need to start having conversations about some work environments that mirror a dysfunctional household, complete with shame, secret keeping, fear tactics, intense pressure, and lack of boundaries. The third dynamic or behavior or action that Dr. Taylor Bryant highlights for us that shows us we're disconnected from ourselves is our desire to maintain unhealthy relationships. Unhealthy relationships. Unhealthy relationships. What do unhealthy relationships look like? I'm so glad that you asked. Unhealthy relationships remind me currently of Will and Jada, their toxic relationship. Unhealthy relationships show up in toxic relationships between spouses, significant others, or even toxic relationships that show up between mothers and daughters, fathers and sons, fathers and daughters, mothers and sons. You ever noticed a particular relative in your household has a toxic relationship with another family member? So the question for us today is, are we engaging in unhealthy relationships? Do we have a trauma relationship that we're currently engaged in with a significant other, a parent, family member, cousin, auntie, uncle, brother, sister? Maybe our traumatic relationship is with a friend or a colleague. What does a traumatic relationship or toxic relationship look like? How do you know when you're involved in a toxic or traumatic relationship? Generally, we say, you know, you're in a traumatic or toxic relationship when you have to hide parts of yourself and hide your needs, when your reality is denied. When you think of this person and you feel resentment, when you lack trust and accuse each other often, when you feel like you need to be something or someone to be loved, when you share an emotional addiction to cycles of conflict or makeups. I can't help but to think about Will and Jada. I can't help to think about Bobby Brown and Whitney Houston. I can't help to think about various types of toxic relationships, Kanye West and Kim Kardashian, right? We see toxic relationships play out in the media before our very eyes. Whenever I think about one of the reality television shows, Real Housewives of Atlanta, Real Housewives of New York, I can't help but to wonder, are these relationships toxic, traumatic relationships? In some sense, I venture to say, or I wonder if Mary and Martha had a traumatic, toxic relationship as sisters with one another, where they lacked trust and they accused each other often. In our text today, Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42, Martha accuses Mary. Martha lacks trust of Mary. Martha feels resentment towards Mary. Martha feels like she has to be something that she doesn't have to be in order to be loved by Mary. I wonder if these two sisters share a toxic relationship with each other. That's not healthy. Yeah, it's not healthy. Question for us to grapple with today is, do we share a traumatic or toxic relationship with someone in our lives? What are the ways in which we need to call an ending to that relationship? What are the ways in which that type of relationship is not healthy for us? The fourth dynamic that Dr. Tamer Bryan highlights that shows that we are disconnected from ourselves is our desire to be people pleasers. People pleasers. Do you know someone who's a people pleaser? Have you ever met a people pleaser before? A people pleaser is one who sits on their feelings. They always go along to get along. You don't necessarily know how they really feel about anything. They never name their authentic, genuine feelings. Usually they do everything for everybody because they're just trying to make everybody happy at the expense of their own happiness. Are you a people pleaser? Do you wrestle with doing everything for everybody so that people will like you? Sometimes we feel like we need to be a people pleaser to attain certain achievements in life, to climb up the corporate ladder if we have a job in a particular institution that forces us, pushes us to act a certain kind of way. We may engage in being a people pleaser. And Dr. Bryan says this is not healthy. In our text in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42, we see our sister Martha, in some sense, is a people pleaser. Her desire to want to get the house together, to impress Jesus and his disciples. Her desire to want to make sure the house is clean. There's a meal that's being cooked on the stove, ready to be served. That was her desire to be a people pleaser to Jesus and his disciples. And Jesus is basically saying to Martha, you don't have to overwork to impress me. I love you just how you are. Do you wrestle with being a people pleaser? Do you wrestle with trying to prove your love to people? Maybe you're being a people pleaser with Jesus. Maybe you overfunction to try to prove your love to God. What does it mean to know that Jesus loves you just the way you are? That you don't have to overfunction, that you don't have to overwork to get God's attention, to get God's love, that you don't have to hold back your authentic, genuine feelings. If you want to be upset with God, that's okay. If you want to be sad and frustrated and question God, that's all right. That's okay. Contrary to the myth that we tend to assert, never question God. No, if it is in fact the case that we serve a God that's omnipresent, that's omnipotent, that knows all about our situation, that knows even the very numbers of hairs on our body, cannot we go to God with our authentic self? Or do we have a superficial relationship with God that says, no, we need to suppress who we are? The question, the fourth reflective question for us is, are we a people pleaser in relationships with other human beings? Are we a people pleaser in our relationship with God? We don't have to be that way. We can free ourselves. Martha did not have to be a people pleaser to Jesus. Martha did not have to be a people pleaser to the fellow disciples. Martha did not have to suppress parts of her being to be a people pleaser to Jesus. It's not being the bigger person when you choose to not call somebody out for their faults because you want to simply say you understand where they're coming from. It's not being the bigger person to push aside constant disrespect because you want to keep the peace. It's not being the bigger person to water down your pain so that the other person feels less guilty. That's called suppression. That's called suppression. We don't want you being a people pleaser and suppressing your authentic beliefs, your authentic feelings. You don't have to be a people pleaser with Jesus. You don't have to be a people pleaser with fellow human beings. Number 5, Dr. Tamer Bryan highlights for us another behavior or strategy that shows we are disconnected from ourselves is our desire to be in control. Our desire to be in control. So the 5th reflective question for us today is, do you have control issues? Do you try to control so many things only to discover that there's so much that's outside of your control? In some sense, our beloved sister Martha wrestled with control issues. She found herself trying to control so much of what's happening in the house, so much of what's happening with who's sitting around Jesus, so much of who gets to sit at Jesus' feet and be in the company of Jesus. Martha finds herself wrestling with control issues. Do you have control issues? Do you tend to, in some sense, grapple with trying to have a hand in everything? We tend to say there are a lot of things you can control, and at the same time, there's a lot of things you can't control. Inside this circle, you'll see that which you can control. So look inside the circle. You can't control being kind. You can't control doing your homework, studying for tests. You can't control how you respond to particular challenges, how you spend your free time, whether or not you choose to ask for help. You can't control whether or not you will apologize. You can't control what you're going to do with your life. But there's things outside of the circle that you cannot control. You can't control who likes you. You can't control how others view you, how others treat you. You can't control past mistakes. You can't control if other people will be honest. You can't control somebody else's decisions. In some sense, our sister Mary was basically showing to Martha, you cannot control me. Martha was having a aha moment that so much was happening outside of her control. There was so much happening outside of her control. And this was the biggest challenge for her. Wrestling with this dynamic where she realizes there's so much outside of my control that I cannot control. The reflective question for you, the 5th reflective question for you. What is it that you're working so desperately to try to control that you figure out you can't control? What is it that you try so hard to maneuver, navigate, fix, only to come to the realization that you can't fix it? You got to let it go. You got to let somebody else be in control. You got to have faith that somebody else can figure it out. Somebody else can take the lead. You got to let go of this desire to want to be in control. And last but not least, the sixth and final act or behavior that our sister Dr. Tama highlights is that many of us underfunction. Many of us underfunction. That's also showing a sign that we are disconnected. When we underfunction. When we underfunction. What do we mean by that? What do we mean by that? In some sense, because Martha, watch this, was so interested in overfunctioning in particular areas of her life, that meant she was underfunctioning in other areas of her life. Underfunctioning can look like letting others do everything, always asking for advice when you know what you need to do, avoiding responsibility, always needing help, feeling paralyzed, hard to get anything done. Underfunctioning anxiety can look like these dynamics. I wonder if because Martha was so busy overfunctioning by trying to do things in the house, if that meant she was underfunctioning in her relationship with Jesus. Think about this for a second. She was so busy overfunctioning by doing other things in the house that in some sense, she underfunctions when she's in the presence of the Lord. She can't seem to just be simply present with God. Are you an underfunctioner? Are you an underfunctioner? Are you one who is needy and always asking people to do other things for you? Do you struggle with taking responsibility? Do you struggle with moving forward in your mission and purpose? Or do you just want somebody else to take care of you? You just want somebody else to always be there for you? How do you resist being an underfunctioner and step up? Take care of yourself. How do you resist being an underfunctioner? Step up, lead, move forward. Stop trying to put your duties and responsibilities off on somebody else. My family, my friends, my beloved, if any of these 6 behaviors are something that you wrestle with, then you could say, wow, all 6 of those behaviors I grapple with. I want to invite you, family. I want to invite you to practice some self-care strategies. I want to invite you to practice some self-care strategies. What are specific strategies you can practice? I'm so glad you asked. I'm so glad you asked. There are particular strategies that you can practice. There are particular strategies that you can practice. First and foremost, we say, it's so important. It's so important to have a helping relationship with a mental health therapist. It's so important to have a helping relationship with a mental health therapist. If you currently don't have a mental health therapist, I want to encourage you. Go to one of these websites. Write these websites down. Go to those websites here. I'm sorry, I'll put it up again. Go to one of these websites and get a therapist. These become so important. Get a therapist, get a therapist, get a therapist. Get a therapist, get a therapist, get a therapist, get a therapist. These become so important for us. We need somebody to talk to. Life is hard. We need somebody to talk to. Life is hard. You can't work through these type of actions and behaviors on your own. Sometimes you need a little help. That's understandable. Okay, get a therapist. That will be so helpful for you. Another set of self-care activities. In addition to getting a therapist, another round of awesome, wonderful self-care activities that you can engage in is really, really, really engaging in thinking about how am I caring for myself? How am I caring for myself? Some other types of self-care activities look like, how do I rest? How do I rest? How do I stay in the house and decide I'm not going to do anything today? I'm going to sit back and I am going to rest. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to rest, right? I'm going to drink some water. I'm going to drink some water. I'm going to set boundaries. I'm going to learn to be kind to myself. I'm going to treat myself to something new because I love myself. I'm going to move my body. I'm going to spend time with people that enrich my life. I'm going to eat well and fuel my body with food that gives me energy and helps me improve my mental and physical health. Real self-care, these strategies you see on the one side of your screen, it's my left side. It might be your right side, depending on your view. But these strategies are wonderful strategies that we can begin to incorporate. These are wonderful strategies that we can incorporate. Things that we should stay away from, strategies that are not helpful, are what we call fake self-care. Fake self-care. These behaviors are not healthy for us. These are the behaviors we need to resist. Dieting. That's right. Resist dieting. The goal in life is not to diet. The goal in life is to eat healthy. Also, resist overconsumption of alcohol. It's okay to drink alcohol, but overconsumption of it becomes problematic. Drugs. Drugs are not good. Don't do drugs. Don't do drugs. Illegal drugs, I should say. Excuse the particular word there. I apologize. But don't be mean to yourself to try to motivate yourself. Don't be mean to yourself to try to motivate yourself. Resist saying yes to everyone because you're a nice person. Resist socializing because of FOMO stands for the fear of missing out. Resist overly socializing because you have a fear of missing out. Sometimes you might have to miss the party, miss the event. Sometimes you may not be able to be present at that particular space and place. Resist buying anything that promises to make you love yourself more. And resist working out as punishment or attending a class that shames your eating habits and your appearance. Practice real self-care, family. Don't practice fake self-care. Practice real self-care. Practice real self-care. Family, I have had a blast. I have had a blast. Do me a favor, share this video. Share this video. Participate in an act of digital evangelism. We need to get the word out. We need to help somebody that's wrestling, just like our sister Martha was wrestling. So please, please, please share this video. Your homework assignment for next week is chapter 4 in the book. That's right. Your homework assignment for next week is chapter 4 in the book, okay? I've had a blast with you today. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless you. Blessings to you. See you later. Blessings.